In today's video, we're going to do a complete Diablo 4 deep dive, not only going through the history of Diablo IP, but also comparing Diablo 4 to its predecessors. So let's get into it. This past weekend from March 17th to 19th, 2023 was the Diablo 4 Early Access Beta weekend for those who pre-ordered Diablo 4, or apparently also for those who went to KFC and ordered a double stack chicken sandwich. Of those 3 days, I could say I really did no life deep dive into Diablo 4, as I likely put in a good 30 to 40 hours in those 3 days alone. The beta restricted us to one of the 5 zones, that being the Fractured Peaks. I managed to get to the beta's max level of 25 on a barbarian, and I nearly min-maxed this character by getting full legendaries, fully upgraded, and a broken build that obliterates everything. So I basically min-maxed the heck out of barbarian in my time with the early access, and I also dabbled with the other 2 classes available, the sorcerer and rogue. On top of that, I basically 100% cleared all of the available side content in the Fractured Peaks, fully exploring the entirety that the beta has to offer, so I could certainly say that I've done enough to form a pretty strong opinion on the game thus far. And in today's video, I want to share my overall thoughts on the game. But before we can begin all of this Diablo beta talk, I want to start off by talking about my history with Diablo so we can build up towards my feelings on where the game stands today versus how it's made us feel in previous installments. So starting with Diablo 1, when I was around 10 years old, my wonderful mother purchased the family a top-of-the-line, dreadful IBM computer, fully equipped with dial-up internet. I recall using the so-called internet to download game demos on this godforsaken 8 megabyte IBM computer. One of those demos was Diablo. I was a complete moron of a child at the time. Didn't know what I was playing or how to play it. And I just got steamrolled in the first few floors of the demo and I ended up uninstalling the game. That was my history with Diablo 1. Moving on to Diablo 2, my friend across the street got this game for his supercomputer. And I remember going over to his house every day to take turns playing it with him. And then I eventually got the game myself and attempted to install it on my crappy IBM computer, which was at this point extremely outdated. But I was able to have a somewhat playable experience with Diablo 2. Me and my friend completed the game, and I remember my best character was a level 90-something Frost Sorcerer. My fondest memory of that game was the progression system between Acts 1 and 2. It absolutely blew my mind at this time. The massive increase in difficulty, the new environments, the new tiers of gear, and all the new features such as introducing socketed items and gems dropping to put them into your gear, it all just blew my mind, and I remember it being a revolutionary gaming experience that I've never seen anything like it before. And that's how most people remember Diablo 2. Fast forward another 6 years to 2012, here I am in my mid-20s working at some movie animation studio, and all my colleagues are huddling around my computer at break time while I'm watching Force Gaming cover Diablo 3 closed beta videos. Every bit of new footage and content released on Diablo 3 was a complete insane hype train. To this day, I don't think I've ever experienced such hype to the level that we did with the Diablo 3 game. So here we are close to release now, and I'm convincing my older sister to come stand with me in line for a midnight release for a game called Diablo 3. My sister thought I was insane, but I used my salesman tactics to convince her to come nerd out with me in front of EB Games for the release of Diablo 3. And even my mom jumped in to participate. She drove us up there, got us some McDonald's, waited in the parking lot while we did our nerdy thing. I remember my sister being extremely embarrassed and commenting on the fact that there were hundreds of nerds wrapping around the gaming store at the heart of midnight. But fast forward to today, and she still talks about that very moment fondly, and this was a game-defining moment which I turned my sister into a true gamer, as she still plays Diablo 3 to this very day. Diablo 3 was an interesting experience for me because I have those vivid memories of Diablo 2's campaign progression, and my underdeveloped mind would never understand that nothing will ever be the same as your first experience with something revolutionary for its time. My expectations and hype completely overtook me, and I assumed this would be everything I ever dreamt of and more. When in reality, it was pretty much the same experience with a next-gen facelift. I know many people say Diablo 2 and 3 are incomparable, and that Diablo 2 was the greatest ARPG of all time, but I believe that that is just a snapshot memory of something revolutionary for its time. In reality, Diablo 2 was fundamentally a bad game in today's standards. It's the reason not everyone is playing Diablo 2 Resurrected right now. All you do in Diablo 2 is farm cows and bale runs to make a better build that will allow you to complete hell mode with less suffering than you did the first time. You are gearing towards making old content easier with no challenge to strive towards, all while farming the same Mephisto boss 1,000 times over in hopes that you pick up a drop before the other 7 players in your group do. Again, it's fundamentally bad game design in today's gaming standard, but agreeably, it was revolutionary for its time. So getting back to Diablo 3, I personally felt it was a massive improvement overall. Personal loot meant no fighting over items with other people, a proper trading system where you didn't have to lobby hop for 8 hours before you found someone that you could trade with, overtuned difficulties that were nearly impossible on release, giving you something to strive towards. Even to this day, everyone in my family remembers and rehearses my brother-in-law's quote from playing Diablo 3 and getting utterly smashed. He once said, "That's Inferno mode for ya." To this very day, we still say that line when we're getting smoked in a game. The game was nearly impossible on release, had whacked itemization issues, a ton of controversy over real money auction house system, which at the time was one of the first experiences of pay to win or play to earn systems introduced to the multiplayer gaming scene. All the good and bad combined, we all had a great time. And for an outsider like my sister with a zero Diablo knowledge, she would become addicted to Diablo 3, and it immortalized itself into her life as her all-time favorite game, as she still does the season journeys here in 2023. So for her, it was that Diablo 2 experience that I had when I was 14. But for me, Diablo 3 was just an improved version of what was once just a fond memory. Fast forward to somewhere around 2020 BlizzCon, and we had the announcement of Diablo Immortal. We were all heavily disappointed, but what would soon followed was the announcement of Diablo 4. I gotta be honest, I didn't expect Diablo 4 to be in the works at all. If anything, I envisioned the next Diablo game, it would be more like a third-person MMO, something to the likes of like a World of Warcraft, or in this case, a World of Diablo. I assumed all of this because Activision Blizzard had been going through some serious changes, and the reason Diablo 3 never got a second, third, or fourth expansion was because the game wasn't, quote, a billion-dollar industry. Diablo 3 was simply not making waves in the monetization department, and development was cut. So my only assumption would be that if there were to be a new Diablo game, it would have to reinvent the wheel so that it could stand the test of time to the likes of, say, World of Warcraft. So again, seeing Diablo 4 announced was pretty shocking for me, and the hype levels weren't really all that high, considering Diablo 3 didn't really live up to the hype that I put onto it back in my mid-20s. That, and I've become sort of a jaded gamer who learned getting hyped for the game and huffing hopium will lead me to being a depressed middle-aged balding man. But I guess that ended up happening regardless, but at least I'm not balding yet. Point being, it's pretty hard to hype a game that's chasing the dragon of an experience that was defining for its time in this genre. If Diablo 3 taught me anything, is that it's impossible to relive the experiences of the past, because a game like Diablo 2 was not only a unique moment in time, but my life was a unique moment in time. I was a 14-year-old kid with the world in my palms, no worries in the world, eating pizza pops and playing the most groundbreaking game of our generation. It was the perfect concoction of awesomeness that will likely never be matched regardless of how redefining modern games are becoming. All that said, Diablo's 4 announcement was coming at a time where monetization, microtransactions, battle passes, and online support games are at their peak. Well, hopefully anyways, it's likely bound to get worse. Regardless, it's hard not to look at Diablo 4 and ask yourself, so what's the catch? Because Diablo 3's development was essentially canned due to not bringing in enough revenue for the development cost put in. So how is Diablo 4 justified to the higher ups that this is now that billion-dollar industry? Then you take a look at Diablo Immortal, the recent Overwatch 2's new monetization systems, a $100 price tag for Diablo 4, seasonal battle pass announcements, a shop, and more. And it all starts to become oh so clear. So now you have to ask yourself, is this something I can actually allow myself to get hyped for? Because this could end up being just a clever monetization platform that which the Diablo IP is built on top of. So regardless of how good the game was looking, it was hard not to be skeptical, which automatically dampened all of my hype. So my obvious approach going into Diablo 4 was, okay, I'll pre-order it because Diablo is a part of my lineage and I have fond memories with it, but I will reserve judgment and set my expectations low so that I'm not set up for disappointment. And that brings us to the present day. After just experiencing Diablo 4 early access beta, going into it with hype levels tamed, expectations somewhat low, and an open mind to see what it's all about, I gotta say I came out this weekend with an overwhelmingly positive outlook overall. So just a kind of a brief overview of all the systems and my opinions of it so far. Starting with character customization, which was really badass. It's a nice addition to the game. It's something that Diablo's never really done before. And now there's an extra level to that where your character shows up in the in-game cinematics, which was a really nice feature. And it helps us build a connection to not only our character, but the world and the story as well. We start as a rundown, dirty peasant in this harsh and brutal world setting, and we just hack and claw our way through what ended up being a pretty entertaining and open world campaign. So I have no complaints about the story in the beta. It was pretty fun overall. I do want to address how incredibly amazing that the graphics are this time around and how it lends aid into this new immersive open world setting that the game has to offer. The game is a visual masterpiece, and the approach of designing a massive open world harkens back to my previous point that I mentioned. The next installment of Diablo should be that of an MMO World of Diablo type game. And I never imagined that they would create a world with such high fidelity, also make it massive like an MMO, but also keep it an ARPG. They pulled it off, and it's so immersive, and I actually forgot that I was playing an ARPG, and I rather felt like I was embodied into a somewhat MMO adventure. I'm really impressed from what I experienced and super curious to embark further and fully explore the rest of the world of Sanctuary on release. I feel Blizzard found a nice formula which they can build on and expand on in terms of regions, continents, zones, making it feel like that of a World of Warcraft, but instead do it for ARPGs. And that's something I never really envisioned with the Diablo IP. So that was all really impressive stuff. What's even more important is the combat. A massive open world with tons of quests, side content, a big campaign, and all this stuff to dive into is nothing without a solid base combat to carry you through it. And I gotta say, the combat feels crisp. Super clean animations, great VFX combined with a smooth yet weighty feel depending on what class you are. The Barbarian definitely had a super weighty, powerful feel to his kit, while the Sorcerer, on the other hand, was just visually impeccable, and the Rogue had a very fluid, agile gameplay to it. The three classes available in this current version of the beta felt vastly different from one another, more so than any of the other Diablo games. In Diablo 3, I did tinker with various classes, but I honestly didn't feel compelled to really sink my teeth into all of them. I dabbled with them all, got bored, and ended up sticking with the monk for a majority of my time in Diablo 3. In Diablo 4, not only did I have a blast tinkering with all three classes, but I feel overwhelmingly compelled to not only play all the classes, but a desire to see how all of them play at the end game. I maxed out my Barbarian, and I want to do the same for the Sorcerer and Rogue, yet I cannot wait for the open beta next weekend to also play the Druid and Necromancer. My only complaint at this moment is there isn't enough time in the beta to max out all 5 characters, leaving me wanting more and indecisive about what character I should play on the actual release. The combat and class diversity is so good and unique this time around that I want to play all the classes on release, and this is something I cannot say I felt the same about when speaking to Diablo 2 and 3. Not to mention we have a much bigger world, story, campaign, dozens and dozens of side activities to enjoy all of this with these new redesigned amazing classes. So, as a direct comparison to that of Diablo 2 and 3, I could certainly say that the beta alone was more enjoyable than that of my experiences with Act 1 of either Diablo 2 or 3. It's just a better, more polished, and fun experience through and through. So if this fun factor carries throughout Acts 2 to 5, then yes, Diablo 4 is undoubtedly better and more improved product than its predecessors. The base product is absolutely worth its money when comparing it to the previous installments of Diablo. So the last thing to talk about would be speculating on the future of Diablo, what its endgame can bring to the table, and will it have that long-lasting longevity that we all look and hope for in our upcoming online service games. I'm going to be doing a whole separate video speculating and talking about Diablo's endgame, Diablo 2, 3, and 4's endgame versus that of the Path of Exiles and Lost Arks and things like that. So what I will say here in the TLDR fashion, games like Lost Ark and Path of Exile, they've been in the oven for a very, very long time. They've not only been developed years and years ago, but they've been ongoing, active online service games for several years now. Diablo 4 cannot release with all the same amount of features that these other games already have because those games have been ongoing for some time. So undoubtedly, Diablo 4's endgame will most likely be more shallow than any of the other games on the market. And I understand we are in the age of gamers wanting that, quote, forever game. Diablo 4 most likely won't be that, at least for on release, but I can certainly say it's a top-notch AAA 100% worth your time, quote, for now game. And with my limited beta experience, I'm already satisfied with the $80 I spent on the pre-order, and I only got to experience a fraction of what the game has to offer. So that's my overall thoughts on Diablo 4 as a whole based off the beta. It delivered above and beyond my expectations, and regardless of how the end game ends up turning out, it appears I'll be very satisfied yet again with now my 4th Diablo purchase in my gaming lineage. So all I can say is temper your expectations for endgame, but do buy the game knowing that you'll create fond memories in the world of Sanctuary once again. The beta definitely has my 5-star seal of approval, and I cannot wait for the full release of the game. And I think Diablo as a base game package is going to be worth your time, worth your money, more so than all of Diablo 2 and 3 were as a box price game, regardless of how good or bad the end game turns out. Because in all honesty, people are still playing Diablo 2 and 3 to this day, and the end game in those were arguably not that good. Boom. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I definitely recommend it. That's going to do it for this video. I'm Johnny5 Live. This is Channel 5 Gaming. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.